Welcome back to It's Good to Talk. I hope you're having a fabulous day so far. Now, I am buzzing because sitting opposite me today is Sam McAlister. Sam is a television producer. She's a criminal barrister. She's a single mother and she's hilarious. We are about to have such a good laugh. Now, Sam is the woman behind the infamous Prince Andrew Newsnight interview with Emily Maitlis. After the interview happened, she wrote a book called Scoops. Netflix saw it, they picked it up, and they made it into a movie. She sits down with me today to talk about the interview, the movie, how surreal it is for Billie Piper to play her, the fact it was nominated for a BAFTA, of which I bumped into her at. I'm excited. She's pretty impressive, and I'm ready to sit down with her and get the scoop. Sam McAlister, how are you?
I'm very well, Harrison. How are you?
I am very, very good. Thank you so much for joining me. So we've actually met very briefly twice.
Yes.
First time you were at White City House on your own, chic as ever, martini in hand. And I was like, of course she's there, like drinking a martini. And the second time was outside the Loos at the BAFTAs.
I mean, that is just such a flex, though. I mean, on both of them. One martini in hand, alone, also good.
Yeah.
And second time, the BAFTAs, he just casually drops in.
I know. I was just like, hey, babe. You were like, hey, see you later. It's a crazy day. How did you find the BAFTAs?
Long. I mean, it wasn't
yes,
like...
That's right.
I'm really sorry.
Everyone comes
so
on and they're like,
ungrateful.
it's been a week. It's been a week.
Oh, my God. So, obviously, full of gratitude.
Of
You know,
course.
Billie was nominated for playing me in Scoop. Incredible. Went on the red carpet.
It is a pretty crazy day.
It was
And
amazing.
You were
it was
literally
amazing.
like a couple of rows behind me. I kept seeing you.
Oh, were you? So, like, I was next
You were on
to
the
Billie.
left-hand side.
Yeah,
of the thing.
exactly.
I was in the middle.
Okay, you were in the middle. Okay, who did you speak to that you were asked to speak to?
Oh my goodness. Do you know what? I had a really good conversation. And like, as a presenter, like I really...
There's no judgment here.
With James Corden.
Okay, I didn't speak to James Corden. I spoke to Maura Higgins.
Okay, yeah. Oh my God.
I was obsessed.
Wait, that's iconic.
Yeah, that was so iconic.
That's
and her
so
outfit was
iconic.
iconic.
What was she wearing?
She was wearing like this huge dress, and it was, again, it was all I talk about is heat, right? But it was super hot.
Yeah, can you stop going on about it?
I'm
please,
about to
Sam?
die.
So I want to start from the start. I want to go back just a couple of years to your childhood. Let's go there.
Watch it.
You like that one? Let's go back there. Do you think people that grew up with you are shocked at what you're doing now, or is this like, of course?
That's an interesting one because I'd never really contemplated that as a question until recently when I saw friends from my childhood that I hadn't seen for decades.
Mm-hmm.
And almost all of them were like, oh, we always knew. And I was like,
Really?
you did?
Really? Okay, yeah.
Complete surprise to me. But they seem to have thought that there was some kind of quality
Spark.
about me, spark, precociousness, obnoxiousness, who knows,
Sure.
hard work,
We'll take
you know,
it. Yeah.
intellect, whatever it was.
Yeah,
Let's go with
yeah.
nice stuff
Yeah.
that meant that something big would happen.
And then you got stuck in to a career and soon realised that it wasn't for you, but you're a criminal defence barrister.
I was.
First of all, for people who don't know what that means, what is that and how did you end up there, and then how did you end up from there to the BBC?
So how I ended up there was because I got to the final year of university. I almost dropped out in the third year because I was this is so obnoxious. I was a bit bored. But thank God, my
It's
mum...
a long experience.
4 years
4
at
years.
Edinburgh. Who's meant to survive 4 years?
4 years.
And I didn't drink. What's the chance?
Yeah.
But I got to the final year and I'd done a lot of debating and public speaking, which I loved. And I really didn't know what to do with my life.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a boy in my year, and this poor man, I talk about him all the time, and he's probably cursing me every time he hears it. I won't say his name.
Her again.
Yeah, exactly. But he was going to do a law conversion course where you can basically circumvent the fact you didn't do undergraduate law and become a lawyer.
Okay.
I didn't know this existed. I thought it's all or nothing. So I wanted to do that course once I'd heard about it.
Okay.
And he said, people like you don't get on that course.
So you were like, watch me.
I was like, well, let's see. So I applied and I did get in.
Okay.
And it was like an amazingly hard, crazy, brilliant, exhausting course, 3 years and 9 months. And at the end of that, I became what's known as a barrister. So everyone says lawyer. Lawyer is two types of things: a solicitor who tends to work in an office and, you know, has amazingly interesting cases. And then the barrister is the one that puts on that, I think it's cat. Is it cat? I'm not sure. Anyway, it's like cat hair or something that they stick on their head with the Batman gown that you see in kind of like dramas looking glamorous and interesting. And I thought, that's what I want to do. So I did for 2 years.
Okay.
But I hated it with a visceral passion.
Why?
I loved the clients. I was super happy in the cells, but it's a little while ago, and I was the only one in trousers, and I was the only one in lip gloss, and I was the only one that was a bit, you know, sort of bougie and feisty.
Yeah.
And it just ground me down. I was miserable. And I thought, I'm going to have to spend 40 more years in this misery.
Yeah, no.
No, thanks. And I remember like crying every day. You know, at a Pret, other brands are available.
Of course.
And I'd have like a mocha and like an almond croissant.
Okay.
And that was the highlight of the day.
Right, yeah, that was the peak.
That was the peak. And then it was
After
7
that.
days a week, and I had no money because it was like 5K a year or something. It
Yeah,
was just
wow.
impossible. So to answer your question, I ended up leaving, and then I'm like, oh Lord, I've got, 700 years left of work and no job. So I ended up asking friends who had interesting jobs if I could pop in.
Okay.
And one of them, thank the Lord, her name's Kate Wright, and she's now a professor at Edinburgh University. She was working at the BBC on a legal programme on Radio 4 called Law in Action. She kindly and probably completely illegally let me come in for 2 days. And they liked me. I was the only lawyer they had in the room. They thought I knew the law. They were a lovely group of people. And they gave me 6 weeks.
Okay.
And 6 weeks became 16 years over the period, I think. Or it might even be longer. Let's not go into that.
Wow. I can't believe that 16 years when you're only 21 is crazy. So
I knew I liked you.
So you went from there then on to Newsnight. How did
Yes.
you get onto the team at Newsnight? And explain your role there, what your job was there at Newsnight for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, I had a kid and I came back and I wanted to do my old job on a part-time basis.
Okay.
But my boss at the time was clear that she didn't think that was an option.
Okay.
And I was put into something called development, which is basically like a Kafkaesque nightmare where hope goes to die. And so I was really miserable.
Yeah.
And I was looking for a way out. And they had this thing called Hot Shoes at the BBC. No idea why it was called that. And you could go anywhere for 1 day.
Okay.
And I was like, I want to meet Jeremy Paxman. So Jeremy Paxman was the presenter of Newsnight at the time. So I went for 1 day. And when I got to the end of the day, it was like being on like a roller coaster ride of kind of like adrenaline, fear, intellectual challenge, pure terror. It was amazing. So I threw myself on the mercy of the editor there, a guy called Peter Barron at the time, and basically, gratuitously begged for him to give me 6 weeks. And if I was good, keep me. And if I was bad, get rid of me.
Sure.
And luckily, I got to stay.
Do you think that the majority of the times when you were doing the negotiations and then they came in and you're sat in the studio and you're watching it back, do you think the majority of the time you were kind of like, oh, that wasn't as much as we thought? And then I suppose putting the opposite, when Emily Maitlis sat in front of Prince Andrew, maybe the opposite, where you thought, oh my Christ.
I think
He said the things.
Totally. I think it's a really mixed bag. I mean, sometimes you speak to someone and you think it's the most scintillating conversation ever.
Yeah.
And then they get on camera and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And the truth is, as a producer, you're in a really privileged position. As you may have noticed, I love people. I love to connect.
Yes.
I never spoke to someone without researching not just their intellect, but their humanity.
Yeah.
So often, actually, to be brutally frank, the conversation that I had would be more interesting than the conversation on air, but a lot less important, because the presenter's job, obviously, is to cut them into pieces or get news lines. It's a different set of priorities.
Yeah.
So most of the time, the interviews would get news lines because I had a really good gut for getting people that would make news and get us kind of coverage.
Yes.
But most of the time, I enjoyed the conversation I had with them as the great privilege of the job.
Yeah. Those are the moments that you hold on to.
Yeah, you're an experienced billionaire. The conversation before the camera rolls, before they get all formal.
Yes, totally.
Before they stop swearing, just like me.
Yeah, I was going to say, just like, you should have seen the switch.
So that is the joy of the job.
Absolutely.
The memories that only you have.
I want to ask, before Prince Andrew agreed to do the interview, or even the conversations begun and you'd met him or spoke to him for the first time, even his team, what was your view on him and the situation? What was your impression of him? And how does that differ from then what it was during your time communicating with him, before now?
Yeah, of course. I think for me, because I had that criminal defence background, if you'd said Prince Andrew to me, you know, prior to the negotiation, the first thing I would have thought of was Jeffrey Epstein. And that was probably quite a niche thought, to be honest.
Yeah, at the time.
At the time, most people would have forgotten that affiliation.
Yeah.
Perhaps they were too young to even know about it. So in the back of my mind, that would always be an association for me. The association would be war hero, you know, man about town, spicy love life, Queen's favourite son, and Jeffrey Epstein. So the first time I kind of came into contact with his team, my first thoughts were, you know, that's the question that we'll need to ask at some stage of this interview. Over this process, of course, all I can do is talk about my direct experience of dealing with someone.
Totally.
So you have to leave your prejudices at the door, or your ideas or your pre-consumption, your kind of like ideas about them, your preconceptions. And I suppose you just have to deal with the person in front of you. So I expect that the average person on the street, if you said Prince Andrew to them, would have some quite spicy language.
Yeah.
Certainly on my way to the interview, you know, if you'd mentioned his name, you know, people would probably have quite adverse reactions to him. But my job is to not bring my ego and my views into the room when I'm negotiating, because it's not about me. And I think for most people, that's why they find negotiation hard, because the beautiful narcissism that we're taught about ourselves is very unhelpful in dealing with people like this.
And so at the time, they were happy to chat, but not necessarily about the things that were worth or important chatting about. And at Newsnight, there were no red lines. And at the time, they wanted to talk about Picture Palace, the thing that he was working on at the time, the sort of Dragon's Den situation that was occurring. How did you get from that place where they were like, yeah, we'll chat, but in this light, to what we saw?
Well, it was 13 months. So the first time I heard from them, you're absolutely right, Harrison, it was come and see how amazing he is doing his entrepreneurial kind of, you know, charity work.
Yeah.
And there were to be no questions of any kind of a news-based nature.
Okay.
That's not going to work.
No.
That's not how I work. That's not how news works. You know, you can't do that. So I politely declined.
Okay.
And then I was
That's quite bold, though. Like, do you think most people do decline someone like that? Because it's still that's still going to get such coverage. There's still going to be something that gets pulled by the tabloids. Do you think they were quite shocked that you were like, no?
I think it is quite a shocking thing to decline for some people.
Yeah.
But for me, the bottom line is all I have is, no one knows I exist at this stage, right? But all I have is my integrity, and my view of the world is that there are no conditions on news journalism.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's not news, it's not journalism, right? It's just, otherwise it's pandering. So you would expect, if you spoke to perhaps, you know, Newsnight or the Today programme or Channel 4 News, that they would say no to that. The next stage is more kind of oblique. I then was invited back unbelievably for an in-person negotiation with Amanda Thirsk, who was his chief of staff. Literally not really anyone, because there was so much going on at Newsnight. So we'd had a lot of like issues. Let's not go into that. We had like, you know, 6 different editors over sort of 8 years. The deputy editor I started with at the beginning of this process, a guy called Dan Clark, has completely gone by the time I'm in this second stage. I've got a different editor, a different deputy editor. No one really knows what I'm doing anyway, in a good way. So I'm just like off, thing. You know. Yeah. So I'm off to Buckingham Palace. I haven't told my editor where I'm going.
Wow.
I'm going to meet the chief of staff for Prince Andrew. She is no way going to agree to him doing an interview with Emily Maitlis, who's the presenter at this stage. Prior, she hadn't been. Yeah. About his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein and these allegations of sexual assault from Virginia Giuffre. That is not going to be a thing.
No.
So I go kind of like on my own, semi-secretly.
It's a bit of fun.
It's
Either
a good
way.
day out.
Yeah.
It's a good day out. And I assume it's going to be a no. Now, that negotiation goes brilliantly well.
Okay.
And by the end of it, instead of just being, hey, I do all this charity work, thanks, have a nice day.
Yeah.
He's now going to speak about Brexit. Big deal for a member of the royal family.
Yeah.
He'll talk about Harry and Meghan. They were a big deal and still are.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, wow, you know, this is going to be cool. I'm going to go back to the office and I've scored an interview with a member of the royal family, which Newsnight had never, ever done. and never ever will again.
Definitely not.
Definitely off the list. But then Amanda said there was a red line, and the red line was that they would not talk about his old friendship, with Jeffrey Epstein. Not a big deal.
Yeah,
no biggie.
Just that mate.
And that, of course, meant that when I went back to the office and said, they're offering an interview, but I knew my editor would say no, Esme ran. And indeed she did. And that is exactly the right thing to do. So we turned it down twice.
Okay.
And I turned it down twice, and somebody else did that interview in May.
Okay.
On a different network with that condition. And I suspect they've been pinching themselves and kicking themselves ever since, because then I stayed in touch.
Yeah.
And then things really went wrong. Epstein's arrested, indicted. He's on trial. He's dead.
Yeah.
Ghislaine Maxwell's back in the frame.
Yeah.
The FBI are very interested in Prince Andrew.
Yeah.
And so I've gone from having a piece in October the year before where my team are like, no one's interested in Prince Andrew, to,
everyone.
My God, you have to get that interview. So it was really just an escalation of pressure and excitement and fear. But I never thought he would say yes.
And what was the moment that he did?
The moment he did was in the final week. So there's been like another negotiation in kind of like October. 12 days later, they invite us in face to face to meet him in person in Buckingham Palace. So the final negotiation takes place on the Monday. He brings a surprise guest, his daughter, Princess Beatrice.
Did that bother you? Or were you like, I'm still doing my thing?
I think at that stage, I was so frenetic that, he could have bought kind of like Barney the dinosaur, and I would have been like, okay, fine, I'll find a way. But to talk about such delicate issues in front of his daughter,
do you think that was why she was there? To cause you to refrain from saying certain things?
No, I don't. I mean,
okay.
I have to take things at face value. And my understanding was that she was seeing him afterwards, and she'd been a little surprised to hear that he was meeting with Newsnight.
Okay.
And she decided to come along. And I take that at face value. I have no reason to disbelieve that. So she was delightful and asked the questions that any concerned young person would when dealing with a father that they adore, who's in a difficult situation. So she's in the room, he's in the room. And it's probably about 2 hours or so. Wow. It's hard to remember.
Okay.
And there was a lot of chatting, a lot of very open conversation, a conversation that I thought would never make it into the public domain.
Yeah.
But of course, at some stage, I do call him Randy Andy to his face, just like Billie Piper does in the movie about me. And he laughed. And then there was a moment where I thought, okay, this might actually happen.
Okay.
And the moment I thought it might actually happen is when he asked me the question, if you were me, Sam, would you do this interview? And that's an extraordinary question for a member of the royal family to ask you for many reasons. But it was the moment where I was like, okay, this man trusts me.
Yes.
And trust is the foundation of agreeing to an interview.
Line,
That's the bottom line. So I thought, it can't be a yes. And Emily was there, and the deputy editor, Stuart McLean, was there. And Stuart was convinced it was going to be a yes. And Emily and I were like, this is, it's an impossible dream.
Yeah.
But within 24 hours, he'd said yes.
And so when he said, do you think I should do this interview? You said yes?
I told him the truth. The truth is my best friend. I'm blunt. And I said, if you're telling the truth, if you think the public will believe you, if you think that, you've got explanations for your behaviour, then absolutely you should do it. If you've got a plausible interview to give. If you're not telling the truth, if you don't think the public will believe you, and if you don't think you'll be able to change minds, then you absolutely should not do it. And that's the honest answer. And of course, he said yes, but he was unable to give the things that I said that you need to do a credible interview on such a serious subject.
Yeah. Do you think there's an arrogance about him that made that his response to that was, well, I know people will believe me and I know I'm telling the truth and da-da-da-da-da. Do you think that's why he thought, okay, it's on?
Yeah, so I don't think there's an arrogance to it. I think that really everyone thinks they're going to do a good interview.
Okay.
When you're a powerful person or a person that's the captain of industry, any man or woman does not come into a room and go, I'm going to be rubbish.
Yeah.
So I think he had a confidence in what he was going to say.
Okay.
And he was obviously surrounded by a system that tells him that he is amazing and brilliant.
Yeah.
So he had, in a sense, the false confidence, I call it royal delusion, that the space between the life that we lead, to a certain extent, although BAFTA and Soho House, but we have a concept of our weaknesses and our strengths. And I don't think that environment makes you very aware of how difficult it is going to be for the public to believe what you're saying. And I think that's one of the reasons he said it in such an unconvincing way.
I think there's also so many things that demonstrate that in the interview. When Emily Maitlis asks about the party, and he responds saying, it wasn't a party, it was just a shooting weekend.
Yes.
And I know she spoke about it publicly, saying, you know, she in that moment realised, yes, to him that's not a party. And understanding the difference between the viewer's perception of what that situation was and his, and being able to understand that it is the same thing, but to him, it's not.
Yes, I think it's a classic case of choosing the wrong things to care about. It is not relevant whether or not it was, as he put it, a straightforward shooting weekend or a party. The element that's relevant is, did you have Ghislaine Maxwell, who was, you know, the on-off girlfriend of a sex offender who was convicted at this time, in your circle of friends and at your daughter's birthday party? That's the relevant question.
He does that a lot throughout the interview.
He does.
It's sort of like, what do you think about this, this and this? And he will like zoom to the other bit and you're like, it doesn't matter what room you were in. Like we're asking about a sex offender here. I also found it amusing in the interview when he says at the beginning about how, you know, it's so great to finally be here. You know, we just couldn't fit it into your schedule or my schedule. That it makes it so amusing knowing the story of how this interview came about. The interview then happens. Talk me through your version of that day.
The day was just mad. I mean, I arrived by bus and it was, the park had been drenched in some way. There'd been like copious rain. I'm in like high heels.
Of course.
And, you know, completely ridiculous outfit as always. Probably wearing something like this, kind of, you know, PVC-ish trousers.
I should hope so.
Yeah, leopard print or something on my feet. Yeah, bougie, too much lip gloss, lots of hoop earrings.
Of course.
And I almost kind of like came a complete cropper in Green Park on the way there. I almost got in trouble again because previously I'd always come on my own or, you know, with kind of like BBC colleagues. And I didn't have the right ID. So there was a horrific stage where I thought maybe I wasn't going to be let in.
Oh my goodness.
But luckily Amanda Thirsk, who I was friendly with by then, made sure I got in. And the day was just this mush of adrenaline and fear because we knew what a responsibility it was. So I arrive into the room. I'm basically the only person that doesn't have a role anymore because my job, in a sense, is a bit like being a surrogate. You give birth to the interview baby and then you pass it to the presenter. So in that room, the chaos going on in the room, you know, all the camera people, they didn't have very long to get started. There's a photographer, there's a makeup person, there's all the producers, you know, we're waiting for Emily, it's lights, it's, you know, chaos, beautiful chaos.
Yeah.
And in a sense, I'm the only person who can stand still. Now that's great because you can take it all in, but you're also sitting with the terror of what's about to happen. So I was 15 feet behind him, the back of his head, throughout the entire interview with Emily in my line of vision, just as you are now. And to listen to him say on camera the things that he had said in private in that interview negotiation just 3 days prior was gobsmacking. So in a sense, my job at that stage is to make no eye contact, not to eye roll, not to laugh, God forbid, not to cough.
Imagine you start yourself in the corner.
Wow, I mean, you know, it was quite big stuff he was saying. You know, it's hard to sit through a member of the royal family giving their alibi as that they were a Pizza Express in Woking. That is an unexpected response. And luckily I'd heard it on the Monday. But it was a very long time to, you know, just kind of take in this relentless avalanche of bad answers.
Yeah. It felt like every answer was like...
just got worse and worse.
Literally.
Because usually you're sitting there with a pen going, oh my God, this is so boring. There's nothing here. You're just waiting for content.
There was so much there.
There was so much content. And you're just thinking, geez, is this going to make it to air? You know, It seemed
And
impossible.
you said that kind of, it felt like everyone in the room knew what you had. You knew what you had. You could tell that Emily knew what you had, and that maybe the two people that didn't know what you had was the Duke of York and his chief of staff, Amanda Thirsk. Would you say that's the case? That they were none the wiser and you were sat there like, oh my God.
Well, interestingly, Emily said she didn't realise until the edit, because a bit like Prince
Really?
Andrew, she's in the eye of the storm. She's not sitting there contemplating. She's just trying not to pass out with the responsibility of it. And obviously, she was brilliant, but it's so onerous, the responsibility.
Totally.
So at the end of it, you could see the difference in faces, though.
Yeah.
She was ashen. She hasn't slept. She hasn't eaten.
No.
It's such a responsibility. And he looked like he'd won the interview lottery. So this discrepancy between us, ashen, fearful, excited, trepidatious, and him, who looked like he'd done really well and took Emily on this tour. Yeah, totally like smashed it vibes.
Was that such a shock that he then offered to show Emily around?
I think it was totally in
like,
keeping.
What's going on?
Yeah, it was totally in keeping with the vibe of the day. He'd been generous in explaining things to everyone. He'd shown, the photographer Mark Harrison on the day, whose life changed on that day too. Yeah. I mean, virtually everyone in the room, their life changed that day, not just his. And he went on a tour and he did some photos with him. So it had been a feeling in which you are going to someone's house, which happens to be a palace, with their mum, who's the Queen of England. Yes. And he's, kind of, in a sense, graciously showing you around his palatial house. So he had been in that kind of mood in terms of showing us things and explaining things to us. And he obviously thought he'd done a blinder on the interview and continued to do so for another, I think it was about 20 minutes, Emily endured walking around knowing what had just happened.
What had just happened.
So I don't know how she got through that without passing out.
And did you all go back to the BBC and watch it straight away? What happened after that? What happens once that's done and you're like, okay, now what?
So we were then like a group of teenagers on sugar. Yeah. So we went back to the office and my amazing boss at the time, Esme Wren, who's like the only BBC boss in the world who is mature enough not to come to the palace for that interview. She stayed. Okay. She didn't even meet him.
Okay.
She stayed back in the office and she was sane. We were gibbering idiots.
Yes.
So we get back. Exactly. We haven't slept. We haven't eaten.
No.
We're on adrenaline and we're just... No one is making sense. No. So she put us all in a room and we all made no sense together. And we knew, what we had. It was impossible to communicate to her the vastness of the offering. Exactly. So the tape is then taken away and I have nothing to do with the edit.
Yeah.
So I don't know at which point Esme, as the editor, or other people just looked at that content and knew what I knew in that room, that this was the scoop of the decade.
Yeah.
And for the BBC, to be honest, the interview of the century.
Yeah, totally.
So it was a slow trickle. And our team didn't even know who we'd interviewed because we'd had to keep it on the down low.
Why?
Because if people had found out what we were doing, the BBC is a gossipy place. And if the Today programme, or if it had been a line in The Sun, Newsnight are trying to get an interview with Prince Andrew, it would have been all over.
Okay.
So we kept it in a circle of 3 or 4 people.
Wow.
So it was the first time the team knew what we had.
Yeah.
And then we begin to trickle through the BBC, and then the great and the good start showing up. And before you know it, you're kind of the talk of the town.
Yeah.
And it was just a trickle through the corporation, then a trickle through the country, and then, of course, a trickle through the world.
Totally. Did they try and pull the interview beforehand?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay.
Which is astonishing, but true.
Yeah. If they asked to pull it, are they able to?
Not really, no. Once it's ours, it's ours. But of course, when you're the royal family and you have quite a lot of influence and power.
Quite a bit.
And a lot of resources, it's completely conceivable that something legal could have happened or a phone call could have happened. And at that stage, that's the thing that I was really conscious of as a nobody minion. I'm not putting myself down. I'm not the establishment.
Sure.
I'm not a powerful person. I'm a junior producer, a part-time worker on a program that's accidentally stumbled into, this incredible experience. And I have no power and no influence. And if a big shot lawyer or, you know, a member of the royal family's entourage makes a call to the Director General or threatens to sue us for millions.
Yeah.
There is no autonomy for me at this
No,
stage.
no.
There's nothing I can do. And could it end up with me being discredited, losing my job? Very conceivably. So it felt impossible that it would make it to air, but just 2 days later it did.
And it was quite the shock when it went out. Throughout this process, you'd got quite close with Amanda Thirst. There was a trust there.
100%.
You know, there was maybe an ounce of friendship there. Have you spoke to her since the interview went out?
Yes, Amanda was amazing to me. I think when you're in a room like that, when we first met one another, she's second in command. I'm like, you know, 32nd in command. There's no command in me. But we both have that understanding that there is peril for the person that is not the main person.
Yeah.
Had this gone wrong, of course, Emily would have faced public difficulty. But the person that would have lost their job in all likelihood was me. And of course, she did end up losing her job. So we have that mutual understanding of what's at stake. She was also a single parent. She'd lost her husband very sadly. She was bringing up some children on her own. She was loyal to her prince. I was loyal to my presenter. In a sense, it's a similar dynamic.
Yeah.
So after the interview went out, we did stay in touch. Okay. And very graciously, she met with me a few times.
Really?
And until maybe last year or the year before, I had seen her, and she was very, very good to me. She could have ruined my life.
Yeah.
You know, a place story saying that I'd done something that I hadn't. I had no way to prove I'd acted with integrity. And so I have great gratitude towards her integrity.
Yes.
That she never at one stage kind of tried to place a story about me, something to try and topple my career.
Yeah.
She treated me with the utmost respect, and I'm full of gratitude for that.
And so the interview goes out. Does your phone blow up? Where did you watch it? Tell me about that experience. It must have just completely unraveled, a complete snowball effect.
Yeah, my life blew up. I mean, I watched it at my boyfriend at the time's place.
Okay.
And I'd not seen his face, Prince Andrew's face, because I'd only seen the back of his head.
Yeah.
So I stood like this kind of weirdo in front of the TV screen, kind of like going, oh
Trying
my
to
God.
see the other angle.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've heard it in the room on the Monday. I've seen it in person on the Thursday, but to see his facial expressions and his gesticulations was just fascinating.
Yeah, some of the facial expressions are brilliant.
Amazing.
So good.
And just the kind of moving in the chair I'd seen, but I hadn't seen the accompanying facial expressions. And so I get to the end of that day, I go back to my house, and then the next day was a Sunday. And I must be honest, it really hit me on the Sunday.
And then the aftermath was pretty crazy for Prince Andrew, but putting that aside for now, quite spectacular for you. You wrote the book Scoops that's there, and then Netflix saw it, picked it up, and made it into a movie, a Netflix movie with Gillian Anderson and Billie Piper. I mean, if I'd have told you a few years ago, what would you have said to
it's
that?
bonkers, because I actually stayed at the BBC for a couple of years after this happened.
Yeah, okay.
I was super sick with COVID. I didn't think I was going to make it. I'm lucky to be here. 5 months out of circulation. Couldn't walk, couldn't talk.
Really?
Was not glamorous. Couldn't wash.
Wow.
And then I went back after I was sick, and a million people, well, a million, that's excessive. 25 people had said to me, you must write a book about this. Because every time I told the story, they were like, oh my God, we had no idea.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to write a book, but it was clear that that was not going to be possible at the BBC. Okay. And so now I'm at a crossroads. Do I stay in a job that I do really like, but to be frank, I can do with my eyes closed, and in a room of uncertainty when it comes to possibility? Or do I throw the dice, try and get a book deal, and just take a chance on myself? So I decided that if I needed to do the book, I knew I would have to leave the BBC.
Yes.
Massive risk for me as a single parent.
Yeah.
Managed unbelievably to get a book agent and a book deal, which is actually crazy hard to do already.
Yeah.
And I was going to give it 2 years. So if I could still eat and feed my child and my cats 2 years in, I'll stick with it. And if not, then I would go back, and do something in the media. But as you rightly say, I managed to get a Netflix deal. And so I'm now 4 years in. I think we hit 4 years next month that I've left the BBC. And it's been amazing and terrifying too. There's so much uncertainty in this. The uncertainty of getting a book published, the uncertainty of not getting sued, touch wood, the uncertainty of once you have been optioned by Netflix. I think A very small number actually make it to screen. And the uncertainty of people saying yes to appear in the drama.
Yeah.
All the way along, it has just been an absolute roller coaster of uncertainty. So it looks seamless, book deal, Netflix deal. But behind the scenes, it's been the immense privilege of my life, but also a roller coaster ride.
And I want to know about the casting process. I mean, Billie Piper played you and did a phenomenal job.
Can I just scream?
Yeah, let's just go crazy. Let's just smash the studio up, Sam. Let's do it. It was such a phenomenal performance from her. I want to know, first of all, how involved you were with the casting process when you found out it was going to be flipping Billie Piper playing you, and how the hell Billie and you managed to make this so identical. Did you go for coffee every day? How did it all work? Tell me it all.
OMG. Yeah, I think we're going to have to say OMFG.
Yeah,
we're going to put it out there. We're going to put the F out there.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah, so I was executive producer. So I had actually a load of autonomy.
Which is also really hard to get on a Netflix movie as well.
Oh my God, it sounds so posh, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's like EP. I didn't know what it was. I mean, I'd gone from like junior producer to executive producer.
Like the diva of the show.
Diva, exactly. The thing about that is that you had power and autonomy. So I was in the privileged position that I got to work with the screenwriter, the incredible Peter Moffat, from the beginning. Yeah. He'd just been working with Bryan Cranston on a program called Your Honor.
Wow.
Like an incredibly acclaimed screenwriter.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of autonomy. So I did have the capability to be involved the whole way through, whether it was the script, whether it was the casting, whether it was, you know, kind of like the minutiae of things that I thought were really important in the script, whether it was, do we say this is based on a true story, or, you know, what is drama, what is real? All of those very difficult questions and exciting questions I was lucky enough to be involved in. So in answer to your question, they came to my house and I don't have a wardrobe. All my clothes are piled on a chair. And I have about 6 outfits that I rotate. Yeah. And the poor costume guy, this amazing guy, Matthew, he had to come and look at my 6 versions of the same outfit. They buy those outfits literally for Billie. Okay. And then they made a wig out of my hair. But the reason she was so amazing was she spent a lot of time with me. And the first time I met her was on this street.
Really? Where did you go?
We met at Dean Street Townhouse, which is in Soho, and a restaurant here on this street. And we spent 2 or 3 hours together. We shared a lot about ourselves as humans, because she'd not played a real person before.
Really? Yeah.
So freaky for her as well.
Yeah.
And then she would just ask me to send her things. She asked me to send her videos with my family, moments of joy. So there was me dancing in the bogs with one of my best friends, Ayana, during COVID with masks. Okay. There's me and my son laughing, my mum and my son with spoon on their noses, because my mum and my son were also in the movie. And then there's lots of videos of me walking, because I said the 2 things that really matter to me are my soul and my walk.
Yes, absolutely.
So she perfected it to the extent that people got us confused on set.
Really?
The papers got us confused. There were some hilarious stories where they thought I was her. Her life is slightly more glamorous than mine, to be clear, although I have the benefit of privacy that poor Billie does not have. Yeah. So she spent tons of time with me, and we were on set together all the time. We got on super well.
That's so special.
I made it clear that once the script was done, I'm not saying a word. She's the artist. So I gave 0 feedback ever on any of the acting or content of the film. It's not my business, not my place.
I think it's also because she's so good at her craft, and you could trust her to just take it all in and really do her thing and work her magic, you know, and that really comes across.
I did trust her, and I still do. I just think she was exceptionally generous with her time, but also she understood that this is a really big deal to be no one and going to be thrust into being the face of a Netflix movie and a contentious Netflix movie, a contentious subject. So I think she understood what was at stake, and she was compassionate and kind.
I wanted to then talk about afterwards, out of interest, the media have ran with this story. They've ran with the interview itself. They've ran with Scoop. They've ran with you. Everything. They've really taken it all. There's been so many headlines. The media often like to paint a picture and create stories, and it's been written at times that you and Emily Maitlis don't get along, that there's a big feud, that you're not on speaking terms, blah blah blah. And I think it's so true of the media to put women against each other. Is there anything you want to say on that, and why do you think the media are constantly putting strong, independent women against each other.
Well, look, I think demand creates content.
Yeah.
So I think we have to take responsibility
Totally.
as consumers
Yeah.
in that, okay, you know, in this moment, we're like, we don't like them putting two women against each other, but we still read about it. If it was someone other than me,
scroll.
And I'm sure you read it at the time, right, about me and Emily.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure Emily is such a public figure that she's so used to this. For me, it was a new experience. And so you don't really know what to do with that. I took it on the chin, you know, I'm sure Emily took it on the chin. You know, we were two professionals working in an environment where one of us is famous and the other one is literally a nobody. And then I'm cast into the public eye. So it's inevitable. There are going to be stories like that.
Yeah.
And, you know, you just have to turn the other cheek. Emily's brilliant at what she does. I was really good at what I did. And the two of us were telling our stories of what had happened, which we're both entitled to do. And we happen to be women. And the idea that, you know, Emily and I have had some kind of punch up is obviously not the case whatsoever. But I see it as an inevitable part of being put into the public domain. So I accept it, but I also say we consume what we create. So the consumption is what creates the love of the idea of two women fighting it out.
Totally.
It's just not the case.
Totally. And then keeping going with kind of the things that have happened afterwards. So I want to talk about Virginia Giuffre just slightly. For those who don't know, she was kind of maybe the most prominent voice behind, you know, what had her experience with Jeffrey Epstein and that of Prince Andrew. How did you hear the news of her death? That was only a few months ago.
That's
and quite shocking.
Absolutely.
And heartbreaking.
Absolutely.
And such a tragic end to her story, and she's done such phenomenal work along with so many other women and people that were sex trafficked and assaulted and abused. Was that quite hard to hear? Because, you know, her words and her name played a huge part in the line of questioning.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously devastating for her family and her children. She was, you know, the reason that this all came to a head, because she was the named individual who accused Prince Andrew of sexual assault, which he still strenuously denies, to be clear, the lawyer in me. But it was her name on this. You know, she was the one in the panorama that just before this happened, she was the one that had spent years trying to bring what she would say, bring him to justice. That was her personal mission and the work that she did with her lawyers. So it is her name, you know, that was on this interview. And obviously her death is a profound and terrible end to the courageous story. Just 41 she was. So the day I heard, I mean, you know, I'm completely irrelevant in this tale as to her courage and bravery. The day I heard, I was doing a literary festival. So we did a little comment to commemorate her at the start of it. And a terrible end after such a terrible beginning to her life, and then such a courageous centre part. So, you know, obviously horrific and sad, and may she rest in peace.
Totally. And the last thing that I think is also in the press as well that I think is interesting is Ghislaine Maxwell recently has moved to a different prison, and she's been re-interviewed. She's had 2 meetings with the Deputy US Attorney General. And there's again a lot of questions around whether Trump is going to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. What do you think of all of that? Because she is just as bad as Jeffrey Epstein in this.
Well, I mean, the irony of this case is that there is a dossier somewhere that makes allegations against a ton of mostly powerful men, and the only person in prison is a guilty woman. And that's just quite an interesting paradigm, really.
It's just a good thing to know.
It's, you know, everyone who's done anything wrong in this situation should be in prison, but she happens to be obviously the poster person for it. I have no doubt that she is guilty of what she was found guilty of. But as a lawyer, the idea that other people have had things dropped against them or stayed against them, or no further prosecutions are going to happen, and she's serving that time, it kind of doesn't make legal sense, but it makes moral sense that she was found guilty as someone who had been part of a disgusting and despicable sex ring that preyed on vulnerable young women, and she is rightly incarcerated for that. But time will tell whether the law changes morality on its head, and I would not be at all surprised if in a few years' time she's roaming the streets again.
Yeah, I agree. I think what you have done, it's been described as public service journalism, and it absolutely is. Like, your story is so interesting. As the media geek in me, it was so fascinating to watch both the interview and Scoop. I think it's so nice to see the whole process behind media. It's so interesting and fascinating, and this was probably one of two royal interviews that have really struck a chord, and there was such responsibility behind it, like you said. So thank you so much for chatting to me. I like to end the episodes with the guest, if they have one, signing their book whilst telling us a quote that they live by. Can I hand your book and a pen to you, and let's
of course
see what you
can.
have
Oh my
in
gosh,
store.
let's do it, Harrison.
Okay, there's a pen, there's your book.
Thank you very much. I suppose the quote that I would live by,
Tell me,
is no one's better than you and you're better than no one. And I think in my life, my mum Netta, who's amazing, taught me that I have never, ever thought that I'm better than anyone, but I also will not be treated as if I'm less.
Yeah.
And so in a sense, my story is, you know, the kind of minion underdog who brings her story into the public domain, and lots of other brilliant people at Newsnight, of course, who worked very hard on this. But I hope that's kind of the legacy. You're better than no one, but no one is better than you.
It's such a good lesson to have in life, and especially in this industry. You know, it is an intense industry, and it's full of a lot of egos. So I think it is good to stay on the ground and ring your mum every day. You know, it's so important.
It's extremely important. So here's to no egos and to mums.
Absolutely. To that. Thank you so much, Sam. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Sam McAlister, what a woman. That was such an interesting conversation. So many scoops, pardon the pun, and I had so much fun. She is such a laugh and such a good sport. You can stream Scoop on Netflix now. You can read her book, Scoops, that's available on Amazon, or you can listen to the audiobook done by her on Audible. And while you're there, listen to us. All the episodes of It's Good to Talk are available on Audible. Thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for coming back. I will see you next week.